In August of the year 2026, something surprising and very important happened. The United States' only aircraft carrier, usually forward deployed in the Pacific Ocean, suddenly left its post. It was sent quickly to a difficult, grinding war far away in the Middle East. This war involved America fighting Iran for many months, holding a naval blockade in a vital sea passage called the Strait of Hormuz. This unexpected move showed how much the U.S. military was stretched thin across different parts of the world, needing its most powerful ships elsewhere. This decision sent shockwaves across the world, especially in Asia. Just days later, another major change followed. The yearly military exercises with South Korea, known as Ulchi Freedom Shield, were cut down greatly. President Donald Trump personally ordered this reduction just hours before the training was set to begin. The president gave a few key reasons for this last-minute change. He mentioned the high cost of the exercises, his good relationship with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, and South Korea's refusal to formally join the American-led efforts against Iran. This sudden scaling back meant American and South Korean forces would not train as much together, potentially weakening their shared defense readiness against threats in the region. These two events, the carrier leaving the Pacific and the exercises shrinking, were not small, separate incidents.
They were clear and visible signs of a much bigger, planned shift in America's global goals and priorities. For the past 1.5 years, since President Trump's second term began, the long-standing strategy called the pivot to Asia was being slowly dismantled. The strategy, which many governments before had tried to build, aimed to focus American power and attention on the East, protecting allies like South Korea and Japan, and ensuring stability in the important Indo-Pacific region. Now, that key focus was gone, replaced by other urgent priorities. This chapter will explain the immediate military drawdown happening right now in South Korea and the wider Western Pacific. It will also ask why the United States is suddenly dismantling military plans and alliances that have been carefully built and maintained for many decades. What does this unsettling strategic vacuum mean for the world, and especially for countries in Asia that have long relied on America's strong presence and support? It means a significant and potentially dangerous gap has appeared where American power and influence once stood. This sudden change leaves many questions about the future safety and balance of power in the region, raising serious concerns for all global players and signaling a new, uncertain era. 2. A broken promise. For many years, the United States promised to focus on Asia. Called the Pivot to Asia or Rebalance, this started in 2011.
The idea was to shift U.S. focus to Asia as China grew stronger. This plan aimed to send more Navy ships to the Pacific, build stronger friendships, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and create a big trade agreement, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It seemed like a solid plan to protect the East. However, this promise often felt like a historical mirage. The Middle East kept pulling America back, always draining its resources. Wars in Syria, 2011, and the rise of the Islamic State, 2014, forced the U.S. to send planes and soldiers back to the region. Each crisis redirected valuable Navy ships, intelligence, and leaders' time away from Asia. Meanwhile, China expanded its power in the South China Sea and near Taiwan, largely unchecked. The economic part of the pivot also failed. President Trump pulled the U.S. out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership in 2017. Other Asian countries formed their own trade deals, leaving America outside. Also, the U.S. military always kept more forces in the Middle East and Europe than in Asia. This made America's friends in Asia doubt the promise. Later, in 2021, a new government tried to secure Asia through new alliances. It created AUKUS with Australia and the UK for submarine technology. The Quad Group, Japan, India, Australia, grew stronger, and a trilateral plan with Japan and South Korea was made in 2023.
America also gained military access in the Philippines. This new lattice of alliances seemed to make the Pacific safer, but military resources remained stretched. Russia's invasion of Ukraine, February 2022, required huge American aid, consuming weapons. Then, in October 2023, a Gaza conflict added another demand, pulling U.S. Navy ships back to the Middle East. These wars meant the U.S. military was stretched thin, near its breaking point. Just as these alliances formed, exploding conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza, plus a costly war with Iran in 2026, consumed critical U.S. power. This left a crucial question. Could the Pacific ever truly be safe, or would America always be pulled away? 3. A new world view. The story moves to a new time. The United States now has a different president. This new administration brought a big change in how America saw the world. It was called civilizational realism, a new way of thinking about foreign policy. This new doctrine meant that the U.S. would focus much more on its own problems at home and on its neighbors. The focus moved away from far-off places like Asia. Instead, the government wanted to protect its own hemisphere. This meant countries in North, Central, and South America. The new plan said America would not let other powerful countries build up their influence in this region. It was a big shift from the pivot to Asia idea, which had tried to make Asia the main focus for many years. China was no longer the top concern for the U.S. military or government. It was relegated to a less important role in the overall strategy. However, a strange situation began to grow. The Pentagon, which is America's military headquarters, was still getting ready for possible conflict. Its military plans for Asia still focused on defending places like Taiwan and supporting allies such as Japan and the Philippines. They were preparing to stop China if it tried to take control. But President Donald Trump had other ideas. After meeting with China's leader Xi Jinping in October 2025, the president talked about a G2 partnership. This meant he wanted America and China to work together as two big world leaders. This idea was a big surprise. It created a lot of tension. The military was getting ready to compete with China, a country they saw as a major rival. Yet their commander-in-chief, the president, wanted to befriend this same country. This created a hard question for everyone. How could the military prepare to fight a country that the president wanted to work with so closely? This new view of the world made America's path very unclear. 4. Trading chips for money. The U.S. government made a surprising and controversial decision about advanced computer chips.
These special chips, called semiconductors, are the core of modern technology, from phones to military systems. For a long time, the U.S. had policies to stop China from getting the most powerful chips, especially those made by companies like NVIDIA. The reason was to protect national security, ensuring America's technological edge and safety. But in August 2025, President Trump announced a new, different approach. He declared that U.S. companies, including NVIDIA and AMD, could sell some of their chips, such as the H20 and MI308 models, to China. The condition was clear. The U.S. Treasury would receive 15% of the money earned from these sales in China. President Trump described the H20 chip as obsolete, meaning it was not the latest technology. This deal expanded dramatically a few months later. In December 2025, President Trump again used his social media platform to announce that NVIDIA could now export its more capable H200 chips to verified commercial buyers in China. These H200 chips were significantly more powerful than the earlier models. However, the fee also increased. The U.S. government now demanded 25% of the profit from these sales. The very newest and most advanced chips, like the Blackwell architecture, were still kept out of China. This new plan clearly showed the U.S. was now exchanging access to important technology for direct financial gain. Many people reacted with outrage. They argued that allowing China access to these powerful chips was a serious risk to global safety and America's long-term security. Legal experts and members of Congress stated that this 25% charge was essentially an illegal tax. They pointed to the U.S. Constitution, which forbids taxes on goods exported from any state. Furthermore, critics questioned the logic. If these chips were truly a threat to national security, how could a simple payment make them safe? A determined adversary would simply pay the extra cost. This significant shift showed a new way of thinking in the administration. Instead of trying to contain China's technological growth, the U.S. was now making a profit from it. This approach viewed China more as an economic competitor than a primary strategic rival. The goal seemed to be financial gain over technological denial. This decision left many people with a big question. Was this a smart move? A way to gain money while carefully managing technology? Or was it a dangerous gamble that put global safety second to gaining cold, hard cash? 5. A big meeting in China. In May 2026, President Trump traveled to Beijing, China. It was an important state visit with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. The trip was designed to be grand and lavish. A big welcoming ceremony was held at the Great Hall of the People. There was also a large state dinner. President Trump visited famous places, showing respect for Chinese traditions. Important American business leaders, like Elon Musk from Tesla and Tim Cook from Apple, were part of the visit. For the public, everything looked very friendly. President Trump and Xi Jinping shook hands and smiled. They spoke about working together for peace. They even discussed a G2, a special partnership between their two countries. President Trump invited Xi Jinping to visit the U.S. later that year. Beijing's foreign ministry called the summit historical, even without new big deals announced. However, a serious secret was revealed after the visit. American intelligence agencies found troubling information. While China showed friendship, it was secretly sending military weapons to Iran. At this time, the United States was fighting a war against Iran, trying to stop its nuclear ambitions. China was providing hundreds of anti-aircraft missiles worth millions of dollars to the country America was fighting.
This revelation felt like a deep betrayal of trust. President Trump faced a hard choice. Should he directly confront China about these secret weapon shipments, or should he prioritize keeping the new U.S.-China partnership strong and secure potential economic benefits? In the end, the U.S. did not publicly challenge China over the weapon transfers.
The desire to keep the broader U.S.-China relationship stable seemed more important. A clear consequence of this was seen elsewhere. A $14 billion arms package for Taiwan, including vital air defense systems, was suddenly put on hold. The U.S. government stated these munitions were needed for Operation Epic Fury, the war against Iran. This decision left Taiwan, a U.S. partner, vulnerable and worried. It showed how new strategic priorities directly impacted older promises to allies. 6. Waiting for weapons. A big problem began for Taiwan in May 2026. The United States had promised to sell Taiwan important weapons. This deal was for $14 billion and included modern air defense systems like PAC-3 Patriot interceptors and NASAMS batteries. These systems were vital for Taiwan's protection against attacks from the air. The U.S. Congress had approved this package in January of that year, signaling strong support. However, the delivery of these crucial weapons was suddenly stopped. Acting Navy Secretary Hung Cao announced that these foreign military sales were being paused. The reason was clear. The United States needed to save its munition stockpiles for its own war. America was deeply involved in a long and difficult military campaign against Iran, codenamed Operation Epic Fury. This war required a large number of missiles and other advanced weapons. Because of this, the weapons meant for Taiwan were now needed for the fight in the Middle East. Taiwan's government was not officially told about this pause. Instead, they learned about it from reports in the news and from congressional meetings. This news caused great concern and worry on the island. Later, President Trump confirmed that he had discussed the Taiwan weapons package with Chinese President Xi Jinping during his visit to Beijing. Trump described the pending sale as a very good negotiating chip for us, frankly. This was a big change from how the U.S. usually handled weapon sales to Taiwan. Historically, America did not talk to Beijing about such matters. Experts analyzed the geopolitical situation. They pointed out that the U.S. military had used a large number of its long-range cruise missiles and Patriot interceptors in the early weeks of the Iran war. America's factories could only produce about 600 Patriot missiles each year, meaning it would take years to replace what had been used. For Taiwan, this meant that even if the weapons deal started again, the PAC-3 interceptors would likely take 4 to 5 years to actually arrive. This forced Taiwan's defense planners to reconsider their strategy. They realized that they could not fully depend on quick resupply from the United States. Immediately after the meeting between Trump and Xi, Taiwan's National Security Council reported a sudden increase in Chinese military activity.
More than 100 People's Liberation Army ships were seen operating near the first island chain around Taiwan. Taipei saw this as a clear signal from Beijing. China seemed to be testing the strength of America's commitment to Taiwan at a time when U.S. attention was clearly divided. Taiwan now faced an incredibly dangerous situation. Its most powerful protector, the United States, was busy fighting a war far away in the Middle East. With a large number of Chinese ships surrounding the island, Taiwan was left feeling exposed and without enough time. Could Taiwan manage to survive this terrifying waiting game, alone against a growing threat, when its biggest ally was distracted? 7. Friends standing alone. America's friends in Asia felt scared. They saw the U.S. Navy's only forward-deployed aircraft carrier leave for the Middle East. They also saw American military exercises in South Korea become much smaller. This made them think they might be alone. They knew they had to protect themselves. South Korea quickly started new plans for its own defense. President Lee Jae-myung wanted South Korea to control its own wartime army sooner, a process known as operational control. He also announced a new secret project. South Korea would build nuclear-powered submarines. The first one would be ready by the middle of the 2030s. This was a big step for the country. Lee said these steps would make South Korea stronger and a better friend to America.
But it was clear they were preparing to stand on their own. Japan also moved fast. Its leader, Prime Minister Sanaya Takaichi, had a strange meeting with the U.S. president. The president even mentioned the attack on Pearl Harbor from long ago. Japan decided not to send its navy to help America in the Middle East. This was because of Japan's old rules about using military force. But Japan quickly spent more money on its own military. It reached a target of 2% of its country's wealth for defense by March 2026. This was 2 years earlier than planned. Japan also decided to change its important national security rules by the end of 2026. Japan did not only rely on itself, it also made closer ties with other friends in the region. Japan and the Philippines formed a comprehensive strategic partnership. This meant they would share important military information and work together more closely. Japan even agreed to give the Philippines special destroyers for finding submarines and anti-ship missiles. These countries were building their own strong defenses. They knew they could not always count on America, which was busy far away in the Middle East. A big worry for these countries was the idea of a G2. This meant America and China might make big decisions about the world together. They would do this without asking their friends. This made countries like Japan and South Korea feel left out and ignored. The clock was ticking.
Their push to be strong by themselves or with new friends was urgent. They wondered if these actions would be enough to stop dangers before it was too late. 8. The final choice. The United States has made big and lasting changes. These choices have left permanent scars on the Asia-Pacific region. America put its oldest friendships aside. Instead, it focused on deals based on money and a long, difficult war in the Middle East. This has left the world feeling fractured and uncertain. For years, the U.S. had a plan called the Pivot to Asia, meant to protect and help countries there. But it was never fully completed. Now, this plan has mostly stopped. A major reason was the costly war against Iran in August 2026. This war used up many important resources, weapons, ships, and leaders' attention, all meant for peace in the Western Pacific. But the shift was deeper than just one war. President Donald Trump's new government brought civilizational realism. This idea changed America's focus. It said China was not the main concern. America should focus on its own country and nearby regions instead. Economic deals became more important than stopping China's power. For instance, the U.S. allowed sales of powerful computer chips to China for a percentage of the profits. This showed a transactional way of thinking. President Trump's way of working with leaders, like China's President Xi Jinping, also played a part.
He often treated long-standing agreements, such as selling weapons to Taiwan,
as items for negotiations. This was a big change. Allies in Asia saw these actions. They saw America's only aircraft carrier leave the Western Pacific. They also watched a large military exercise with South Korea cut in half. These events made them feel less secure and question America's promise. The world is now asking, is this retreat from Asia just a temporary problem? Or does it mean the final end of America's long era of leadership in Asia? This question causes dread among many nations. America's allies, like South Korea and Japan, are not waiting. They have started to protect themselves. South Korea is secretly building nuclear submarines. Japan is rapidly making its military stronger, ignoring old rules. They are forging new alliances. They are pushing for self-reliance because they can no longer fully depend on Washington. This shows a fractured world where old friends must stand alone. What do you think? Will America return to its former role in Asia? Or is this new direction a permanent change for the region?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.